Thank you for joining us today. We're just going to do a roll-up of some important updates that we made in the Synapse UI over the past couple of weeks, really. If you're familiar with us, the team at the Vertex Project is always trying to make the Synapse UI more useful for the analyst. For us, this really means giving the analysts the ability to hit the ground running when they first start using Synapse. We want people to be able to get to work as quickly as possible, researching and analyzing their data, whatever data set they're working on. A lot of focus as a result is trying to make the UI as easy as possible to learn and to use, and to try to make things as seamless for the analysts as possible as they go through their job. So today we're going to highlight several specific features that the Vertex team introduced. These are all relatively small features that have pretty outsized impacts on at least my workflow from the day-to-day. They make my job a lot easier, so I want to make sure that you all know about them. So we're going to go and run through them all. The first change that we're going to talk about is this text search that we now have. Right now I'm in the Synapse UI, I'm in the research tool, and if I go over to the mode selector on the side here, right now we're in storm mode, but we introduced this new one called text search, which is right here. So if I go ahead and switch into text search, and let's say that I want to look for anything that we have in the cortex that's related to Lazarus. Lazarus is has become kind of an umbrella term for North Korean threat groups. There's some organizations use it to refer to a specific North Korean threat actor, but it also has kind of become a little bit of a catch-all in a way. So if I wanted to see what we knew about this, I can go ahead and just put in Lazarus there, and I'll instantly get a lot of results back. I can go over to the scroll to form tool on the side if I wanted to jump to any specific nodes in particular. Like let's say that I was interested in seeing any web posts, which they're also right here. I can just go ahead and lift them. And some of them that I might see are things like this Sanctions Violation Act that alert that references Lazarus. If I was interested in, looking if there is, let's see, a detection that references Lazarus in the name, I can go ahead and navigate to that. This doesn't involve Storm. It's just, just introducing a text term and searching off of that. However, if I want to, I can go ahead and I can pair it with Storm. For example, if I was interested in everything that we knew about Lazarus that was related to, say, a MITRE attack technique, I can go ahead and just pipe that back to Storm and include the node form that I'm looking for and go ahead and run that. And I'll be able to see the results that we have. If I hover over the description, I can see where it references Lazarus, and that's what the text search is actually pulling. I might also do this to, do some other pivots if I wanted to. For example, if I wanted to look for everything that references Lazarus, but I'm specifically interested in tags, and then I want to see what nodes are tagged with those Lazarus tags. I could use this query that's combining the text search and Storm to get my results, and these are my Lazarus nodes. One of the things that you should know about text search is that you do have to have the Synapse search power up installed, since it does use this, but otherwise this gives you a little bit more flexibility in some of your querying. So that's if I want to search for a specific text term. There's also a different, something that we introduced to our lookup mode, which if you go to our mode selector and just switch over to lookup, that will actually give us an option to add additional nodes. So for example, let's say that I had a whole list of nodes or a whole list of indicators. In my case, it's a mix of IP addresses and domains, and I wanted to see if we had any of them in Synapse or if we knew about any of them. So I'd go into the lookup query mode, and I just go ahead and copy and paste it, and then I'm going to go ahead and run it. Two things happen. We'll see a pop-up here, which we'll come back to, but we'll also see some of the nodes that showed up here. So the ones that show up here are all things that we already have within our Synapse instance. It's only 9 in total. I have a lot more in my list. I have domains, I have IP addresses. But these are the ones that currently exist. So there are a lot that don't exist. And so if I just run that again to get this pop-up back, this pop-up actually gives me 18 suggested nodes that don't exist, but Synapse recognized we don't have these, but we recognized what they are. And if you want to go ahead and review them, you can see if you want to add them or not. So I can just go ahead and click on that pop-up to review those nodes and see what Synapse is suggesting for me. For example, the first one, it recognized that this is an IPv4 address, so it showed me this is how I would model it if I were to import it. So I can go through and I can review these. I can see that they found accurately recognize the domains, they accurately recognize the IPv4 addresses. If there's anything in here that I decide that I want to remove that I don't want to add to my Synapse instance, I can just go over to the menu on the side and I can just remove it. Otherwise, I can just go ahead and I can create them all. And it'll add all of those so that they're now ingested into Synapse. Another thing that I frequently run into when I'm working in Storm or when I'm working in Synapse is a lot of times I'll have queries that someone will mention to me or that I frequently use, but I don't remember. Frankly, a lot of times there'll be things that Vizzy or someone will mention in our Synapse, our public Slack channel, and I'll think like, oh, that's a really good idea of a query that I don't have a use for now, but it's something that you know, I want to remember for later. When I first started using Synapse, I also had kind of a cheat sheet that I used of queries, and that was something that I used that was external to Synapse, and I would have to constantly switch back and forth between whatever document my cheat sheet was on and Synapse. Well, one of the things that our devs implemented is actually query bookmarks. So if I, you know, over in my Synapse instance and I have a query that I want to remember, I want to save, I can go over to the menu on the side and I have this bookmarks options. I can create a query bookmark to save any sort of bookmark or bookmark a query rather that I might want to come back to that's useful. I can see all of my bookmarks that I currently have, and I can also go ahead and manage my bookmarks. So for example, when we track clusters of thread activity, we use a GUID as opposed to a specific name or something like that. I can never remember the query that we used to generate that random GUID, so I just saved it as a bookmark, and so now I can just use this bookmark to go ahead and run it. There's a few other queries that I have in here, like this one was one that I think Vizzy threw into the Slack channel, our public Slack instance, that if you want to see if nodes from a certain threat cluster intersect with nodes from any other threat cluster, it'll run that for you. I also tend to use query bookmarks if I'm working on something and I'm, you know, ran out of time for the day, but I want to come back to it. I'll save my queries so that it's easy to find my space. And I can go in here and edit them at any time. So for example, if I wanted to generate a new threat cluster tag using that random GUID query, and I don't remember that, I want to just go ahead and run it, I can just go over to my bookmarks, all bookmarks, and I can select the one that I want to run, and it will go ahead and run for me. And so this would be the query result. This would be the tag that it generated for me. So I didn't have to remember this. I didn't have to type it out. I could just go grab it from my bookmarks. It helps. It will stay the same if you're switching in between views. For example, I'm in my all the small things view, but if I switch to another view where I was doing different work, I would still have my query bookmarks the same. I wouldn't lose those. I mentioned that I do use query bookmarks to remember where I left off when I'm querying things or if I'm working on a certain project. However, there's also times where I won't remember to save something as bookmark, or it will be something that I'm working on and I'll think back, oh, what was that thing that I was querying the other day, or what was I last looking at? And I get tired of continuously tabbing up through all my queries. So one of the things that we have that you can use for that is if I go over to the menu on the side, we actually have query history, and it will save, I believe, up to 100 of your most recent queries. So I can, if it was a recent query that I know I ran, I can just go and scroll back. However, if it's something that is not so recent, or I want to search, like for example, I know that I was working on this something related to Elliott Industries, and so I can start typing in, and it will actually pull it for me, the queries that were related. In this case, it was a domain that I was working on, so I can always go ahead and select that, and it will lift that query for me, and I can go back and run it. So again, that's query history. If you forget what the last thing you were working on, or what that query that you ran, however many queries ago, you can always go ahead and look it up there. The thing to remember about when you're using query history is that it's only going to save the actual Storm queries that you run. For example, this is something that I'm running in Storm query language. But if I were to navigate to this INET DNSA record by clicking through the UI, by going, lifting the domain and exploring over, this is not going to get captured by query history because I'm just clicking through the UI. It's not a Storm query that's the history is able to capture. So the thing to know about query history is it is just your actual Storm queries that are going to be cataloged. One of the things that I also frequently find helpful is that a lot of the times when I'm working doing certain research projects, or if there's something that I'm working with another analyst on, or I want them to be able to see something I have a question on, a lot of times I'll ask them if they'll take a look at my work. If I have a question about a specific node that I'm seeing, a specific result or specific records, I want them to take a look. And one of the ways that I can do that is by actually sharing the query with them. So for example, if let's say that there's something about this DNSA record that I wanted another analyst's opinion on, I can go ahead and I can just copy this query link to actually give to them. So when I copy it, it will just save to the clipboard, and then I can send them that link. They can go ahead and paste it, and they can run that same query, and they'll get my results. The thing that we should remember about this is that the analysts that I'm sharing with, they do need to have access to my Synapse instance, and they also need to be able to have access to the same view that I'm in. Otherwise, they might not be able to lift the same data, or they might not have the same results that I'm getting from my query. But if it's someone that I'm working closely with and they do have access to my instance and to my view, copying a query link is a really easy way to give them access to what you're currently looking at. So if you have any questions, if you want them to specifically look at these results, that's an easy way to get their eyes on it. The last thing that I want to share with you is some updates that we made to tagging. There's some people had questions about, well, how do you know if we built out this tag tree, but we're having trouble with identifying tags that currently exist, or how do you avoid typoing when you're writing a tag and not accidentally creating a new tag tree? So one of the things that our developers implemented was a different kind of tagging system, where I say that I wanted to go ahead and tag this domain as to note that it's a domain that's masquerading as a legitimate Google domain. I can go ahead and click add tags, and I'm going to get an option where it's going to support autocomplete and give me a drop-down menu of existing tags, and also note if I'm creating a new tag. So let's say that I am, I know that there is a tag for domains that are masquerading as something, but I don't remember what this tag is. It's a few layers down in our tag tree, but I'm just going to start typing mask because I know it's masquerade. So it gives me the option of I could create this as a new tag, which I don't want to do, but this is an existing tag that we have here. So I can go down to that. What else is in this tag tree? I can hit tab and it will open this up for me. So if I want to see if there's anything that's with Google, do we have anything with Google? I can go ahead and I can see the tags that exist. So I can go and select that tag and I can just go ahead and add it. It's an easier way to avoid typoing a tag, to know what tags exist rather than having to go switch back and forth to the help menu, or just guessing or relying on your memory to help identify it for you. It's also particularly helpful if I have tags that are maybe multiple levels, our tags are hierarchical, or if it's tags for things like different threat clusters that again use those GUIDs rather than a specific name. Let's say that I'm working on a threat cluster that I know the GUID starts with 205, but I don't specifically remember the rest of that, that long GUID. I can just start typing and it'll go ahead and lift it for me. And then I can see, what are the other tag options, if it's a threat cluster, if there's anchor, if there's other additional layers lower than that tag in the hierarchy. So that is a new option that we have for adding tags that hopefully will be a little bit helpful for people. So that's a run through of our recent rollups. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to join us in our Slack instance, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you for joining us.